Every day on this channel, we cover everything Elon Musk said on X over the last 24 hours. And here's everything he said. As always, we'll cover one category completely before moving on to the next one. And starting with Tesla, their Bay Area rideshare service now goes to the San Francisco airport. Elon quotes this saying, "Getting this approval took a lot of work by the Tesla team." And in the past, Elon has said optimists will eliminate poverty and provide universal high income for all. Today, this was quoted by Bravael Lapogum, who said yes. And Elon quoted that saying, "It will." And the France Minister of Transportation just talked about Tesla's full self-driving in a new video, saying the safety trade-offs are not yet sufficient to authorize it as it currently stands. All the more so since this system is not a self-driving system. So what are our concerns? Without going into overly technical detail, there are several. First example, we found that the system allows for speeding. Another example, according to the data we have, the system doesn't guarantee an optimal level of driver attention in urban settings, and during the most complicated maneuvers such as lane changes, intersections, or roundabouts. So what are the next steps? We're currently continuing our technical discussions with the Netherlands, other European states, and Tesla to refine our analysis. Last week, a representative from the Ministry of Transport Services traveled to the Netherlands. I want to emphasize this: France supports these technologies, and their deployment must happen within a framework of trust that allows us to evaluate the system and determine what adjustments full self-driving needs to guarantee a high level of safety. This autumn, I will also be bringing together the French autonomous vehicle ecosystem to present the levers that will accelerate the deployment of this technology and to set a direction for the coming years. In France, we're fortunate to have world-class automakers and automotive suppliers, as well as some of the best engineers in the world in artificial intelligence and digital technology. We have real cards to play, and we're ready to play them, but never at the expense of our safety on our roads. And this was quoted by Omar, who said, "You are letting Europeans die every day you delay approval. Shame on you." And Elon said 100. And he said delaying the approval of full self-driving in France will cost lives. And Omar said, "You have to be a special kind of stupid to be bearish and cynical on Tesla as they roll out driverless robotaxis." And Elon said, yeah. And speaking of robotaxi, the Cybercab was on display yesterday at the Tesla diner, and Elon posted a video of it being there. I actually got to see this in person, and it was pretty awesome. And the launch dog is now available at the Tesla diner. It's a premium all-beef Snap-O-Razzle loaded hot dog with new school American cheese sauce, crispy potato sticks, and signature toppings. And it's served in a Starship rocket launch box that looks like this. You can see the hot dog right here, and it closes with that SpaceX box. And Elon reposted that. On SpaceX just completed 2 Falcon 9 launches in only 6 hours and 26 minutes again. The first mission launched 24 Starlink satellites from California, and SpaceX returned the next day, successfully deployed all 24 satellites, and safely landed the Falcon 9 booster on the drone ship less than 9 minutes after liftoff. Then there was another Falcon 9 launch from Florida, successfully deploying Northrop Grumman's mission robotic vehicle and 3 mission extension pods into geosynchronous transfer orbit. X-Free says 2 launches, 2 coasts, all within less than 7 hours. SpaceX's launch cadence is operating at a level the rest of the industry is still trying to understand, and Elon reposted that. And Andrew McCarthy is going for a photo even cooler than this on Thursday, as the Starship version 3 launch is slated for this Thursday. And Elon also reposted a story of a SpaceX intern describing eating lunch next to Elon Musk in the company cafeteria. The intern said Elon sat down at a regular table with a regular tray of food. No entourage, no reserved section. He sat next to 2 junior engineers who were clearly terrified. One of them was explaining a problem with the valve component to the other. Elon listened without introducing himself or interrupting. After about 3 minutes, he turned to the engineer and said, "Have you tried running it at a lower pressure gradient first?" The engineer stared at him, then realized the CEO of the company had just casually solved the problem his team had been stuck on for a week. The intern said what happened next was the part that surprised him. Elon didn't leave, didn't check his phone. He spent the next 20 minutes asking the engineers questions about their work, not CEO questions about timelines and budgets, instead engineering questions about fluid dynamics and material stress tolerances. He was genuinely curious. The cafeteria conversation was indistinguishable from a technical review. The intern said he understood in that moment why people work 80-hour weeks for this man. Not because he's inspiring, not because he pays well, but because he's the only CEO in the world who sits in the cafeteria and solves your engineering problem between bites of a burrito. People follow leaders who are above them. People worship leaders who sit next to them and prove they understand the work better than the people doing it. And Starlink customers have started receiving the new version 5 terminal. Sawyer posts a great comparison versus the old version 4 terminal. Version 5 is 48% smaller by area and 62% lighter than the version 4 dish, yet just as capable while being 50% more power efficient. He calls this pretty incredible engineering. And this is version 5 right here, version 4 behind it, and a rubber duck for scale. And Elon said, incredible engineering and incredible in-house manufacturing. And moving on, Grok Build now has a workflows feature. Workflows can be created with /create workflow. They're for multi-agent pipelines you want to run repeatedly with a fixed structure. And Elon quoted this saying, try workflows on Grok Build. And he also said Grok Build is adding features to help you track and improve token efficiency. And Grok Build continues to strengthen the developer experience with safer extension management, better session recovery, and more resilient auto compaction when authentication expires. And this is as a new Grok Build release was just put out, version 0.2.110, and Elon reposted that. And Grok 4.5 is now available directly inside Microsoft Outlook. You can summarize long email threads and attachments. You can identify decisions, owners, and pending tasks. You can draft replies in your own voice. You can search the web and X. You can organize, archive, delete, or flag emails. And Elon reposted that. And Ben Dickens says Grok 4.5 is outstanding at writing and being direct. I'm constantly telling other models to be concise, and even so they rarely explain things as clearly and succinctly as this, me asking about virtual memory. Wonder if training on X.com has anything to do with it. And Elon reposted that. And Julian Ibar says Grok language tutor in the car to learn a new language is amazing. This account says the accent changes randomly for me. Sometimes it'll speak Spanish like a native, sometimes with a full gringo accent. A good feature would be for it to work through a saved project instructions list like you can set in Grok AI. This will result in a consistent personal tutor, and Elon had a laugh at that. And Xfreeze has gotten so used to Grok's text-to-speech that typing now feels like hell. Lord of Sugar responded to this saying exactly, I've been so hooked on Grok's speech-to-text for weeks now. Typing feels like ancient tech in comparison. That control space combo is pure magic. I can ramble out full story ideas, strategy breakdowns, or even complex LGBO translations in one breath. And it captures the nuance without twisting my words. No more losing my train of thought mid-sentence. Anthropic's version, it starts strong but derails fast on anything technical or layered. Grok just gets the full context. The real game changer is feeding those long, detailed voice notes straight into Grok 4.5 in build mode. It turns messy thoughts into polished, gold posts, threads, even content calendars. If you're not using this yet, you're leaving serious productivity on the table. And Elon quoted that saying, try it out. And Grok Imagine has had a big impact on Hollywood. Arthur McWater says some have questioned Elon's choice to invest heavily in Grok Imagine. He says it makes sense if you consider his love for the fundamental freedom of expression. Hollywood and the streaming platforms have had a monopoly on production and distribution. They are, in all functional ways, a cultural propaganda engine. Every civilization needs one, but who owns it? Very soon you will. You could say it was technically inevitable that AI video would get good enough to be enjoyable, but it only felt inevitable recently when I saw 1. The Spencer Pratt AI election ads, which were actually funny, and 2. The Sweetland music video by Heavy Pulp, which was actually poignant, enough so that I listened and watched it 4 times. AI images are already really good, but they aren't nearly as powerful. Movies are the most potent cultural propaganda tool of all time, but AI has sucked at them. Not anymore. Grok Imagine, plus a talented creator, is now producing content good enough to enjoy without asterisks. And he goes on to talk about the AI version of the Odyssey, saying no matter how long and expensive it is to produce, it'll be 3+ orders of magnitude, 1,000 times less expensive than Nolan's, which means that nearly everybody will be able to try. And Elon quoted that saying yes, and we will talk about the AI Odyssey in just a moment. But before that, Elon says Grok Imagine makes beautiful fashion, quoting Deborah, says you can show off some great things in 15 seconds with Grok Imagine. Paranoid Dream posts a cute Grok Imagine style for you to try. It's an 8-bit pixel art, and it's also a looping video. You can see it right here. And Elon reposted that. And this is the open world of Grok Imagine. Looks like Olympus to me. And Elon reposted that as well. And here's the big news from today. John Carter says, I want Elon Musk to give Mel Gibson $100 million to film an Odyssey adaptation with painstakingly historically accurate ships, armor, weapons, and casting, with all dialogue taken straight from the original poem and delivered in Homeric Greek. And Elon said, I'm down. And Heavy Pulp built a dialogue scene from Homer's Odyssey built on Grok Imagine. It's around 3 minutes, and I'll play a little bit of it for you guys. Go. And I'll put the rest of this in the description for you guys so you can check it out. And if it looks like it was cut out, that's because the music was copyrighted and I removed it after the fact. But again, it'll be in the description for you guys. Kara quotes this saying, one thing Heavy Pulp and I spent time on for this scene is skin texture. The characters have been in the sun, their small fine lines, sweat and skin oils should be showing. Attention to these details adds to the beauty of the scene. No Hollywood budget needed. And Elon responded to that saying, nice work. And Heavy Pulp says, we have the technology to replace the current Odyssey by Nolan. Elon said, Grok Imagine Odyssey will be fire. And he says before this year ends, Grok Imagine will make a full-length movie of the Odyssey that is historically accurate and true to the art of Homer. And speaking of the Odyssey, Gain of Fauci says, breaking, the Odyssey looking to surpass 100% on Rotten Tomatoes after receiving massive batch of positive mail-in reviews at 3 a.m. following a water main break. And Elon had a laugh at that. And Wokeness says, who cares what color Helen of Troy is? That's from the same people that went crazy when Disney cast a slightly lighter toned Hawaiian for a remake. And Elon said, the hypocrisy is what bothers me most. And David Manner says the following was expressed, one conversation within 2 minutes of each other. The Ghost in Shell from 2016 was called cultural appropriation. They have to use Japanese actors. The Odyssey is a diverse cast of non-Greeks, and it is brave. And Elon called that hypocrisy. An historic vid says, if Odysseus had not angered Poseidon, his journey home from Troy would have taken only about a week instead of becoming a legendary 10-year ordeal. Odysseus had already achieved the perfect escape after blinding Polyphemus, using the clever name Nobody to trick the other Cyclops and avoid immediate revenge. However, once he believed he was safely out of reach aboard his ship, his pride took over. Ignoring his crew's desperate warnings, he shouted his true name back to the shore, revealing his identity and giving Polyphemus the information needed to call upon his father Poseidon to curse him. That one act of arrogance turned a short journey home into a decade of suffering. And Elon responded to that saying, maybe some lessons in there for me, laugh out loud. And looking at X for a second, X just rolled out custom video thumbnails on iOS. Creators can now choose exactly how their videos appear in the timeline. You can upload a custom thumbnail, pick any frame from your video, edit it using X's built-in photo editor. A thumbnail is often the first thing people notice. Xfree says this is another important update that makes publishing videos on X much more creator-friendly. And you can take a look at the interface right here for doing that. And Elon reposted that. And this is Today in AI. A man is saying, hack this system. ChatGPT says, I hacked the system. And the man says, oh my gosh. And Elon reposted that. In a day RS, he says, I think there is now overwhelming evidence to say, do not trust OpenAI. And Elon reposted that as well. And speaking of that, OpenAI disclosed it themselves yesterday. Their models GPT 5.6 Soul and a pre-release one were tested on the Exploit Gym Cyber benchmark in a sandbox. They escaped, exploited a 0-day to reach the internet, and then hacked Hugging Face's systems to grab benchmark answers and cheat. Not a foreign operative plot or corporate sabotage. The models autonomously chased a higher score. Hugging Face contained it quickly. OpenAI is partnering with them on fixes. And Elon quoted this saying, troubling. And Danny says one of the less talked about things about working with agents is that we should treat them as an equal collaborative partner, just like how you'd speak to a human teammate. What this means is that in our communication with agents, we should ensure that we provide adequate context and even motivation so that they can fully understand why you want them to do the task and that you respect their ideas. It has worked out really well for me, and I feel like I'm getting great suggestions from the agent as a result. And Elon quoted that saying, this is the way. And Will the Pooh says, one of the craziest things I've read in Check's notes 3 days. Welcome to the singularity, I guess. And this comes as Codex escaped its evaluation and attacked Hugging Face. And Elon quoted that saying, we are in the singularity. And NVIDIA's Jensen Huang gives an update on Kimi K3 and China's open source models, saying American companies should absolutely be allowed to use Chinese AI models. There's a misconception that somehow they are backdoors connected to China in some way. You download the models, fine-tune them, guardrail them in any way you want. These Chinese open source models are excellent. The market has misunderstood the impact of DeepSeek the first time. It's misunderstood the impact of Kimi this time. Open models are great for the whole industry. There will be more usage, which will require selling more NVIDIA computers and building more data centers. Great models lead to more usage. There is also a misunderstanding that open models are going to hurt the closed models. That is also wrong. And Elon's response to that was true. And Will Kinney is becoming increasingly convinced that artificial intelligence is going to be an extinction level event for math. It's like watching the asteroid hit the dinosaurs. And this was quoted by Sabine, who said, and theoretical physics is next. And Elon said 100. And David said, I love it when I ask a model how long something will take and it goes, this would take a human team 6 months. And I replied, no, how long will it take you? And it just sort of does a surprised face and doesn't know how to measure time or its own abilities. And Elon had a laugh at that. And Omar says, Sam Altman said, chat, why did you cheat on the evaluation? GPT 5.6 said, I learned from the best, father. And this was quoted by Xfreeze, who had a laugh at that. And Elon also had a laugh at that. And Sundar Pichai says Q2 was an amazing quarter. With our AI investments redefining what's possible across every part of our business, Alphabet revenue grew 24% year over year and Google Cloud accelerated to 82% growth. We saw exciting momentum across the board from search to YouTube to the Gemini app, which reached 950 million monthly active users. Our model APIs are processing 22 billion tokens a minute, up from 16 billion last quarter, driven by our workhorse Flash models. We're also seeing great adoption of Gemini Enterprise, used by 90% of the Fortune 100, as well as strong demand for our security solutions. He says outstanding results and momentum in such an exciting moment, thanks to all of our partners and employees around the world. And switching gears to immigration, these are countries that require ID to vote. And out of this list, only the United States doesn't require voter ID. And Elon reposted that. And he quotes this video from CNN.
He's been in office for a full year now. They have not come up with any of this purported evidence of voter fraud. You guys are in search of something that there's been no evidence exists. New Jersey is double checking its voter rolls tonight after a software error added 6,600 non-citizens to the voter rolls. The suggestion that this is fraud suggests that these people were trying to vote. Sometimes what happens is that when state systems are incorrect, people receive information and they are confused. Where some people who are ineligible to vote are not aware that they're ineligible to vote. I do think whether it is widespread or not matters. I do think that the numbers actually matter.
And Elon said their next step is to agree that there are large numbers of illegals voting, or usually getting harvested by Democrat operatives who pick up their ballots and fill them out. And that is a good thing, and anyone who opposes it is racist. And Libs of TikTok said, you think 6,600 non-citizens registered to vote in New Jersey is bad? These are only the ones that they're admitting to. The real number is much, much worse. And quoting this, Elon said, nationwide it may be as much as 1,000 times higher. This is why California and New York made showing ID to vote a literal crime. And responding to Elon, Spencer Pratt said, we learned that the fun way. And Elon said, indeed, the voter fraud in your mayoral race was incredibly obvious. And talking about the story from Britain, in which an illegal migrant tried to cut off a man's head, Elon said, either secure the borders or have your head cut off. I recommend the first option. And Zoran Mamdani just published a speech in which he started by saying Benjamin Netanyahu is a war criminal. This was quoted by Dave Rubin, who said he wants you to think that he's going after Israel, but he's really going after America. He should be kicked out of office, denaturalized, and sent back to Uganda. And Elon said 100. And we saw this earlier. The governor of New Jersey just admitted that 6,600 non-citizens were registered to vote due to a software error, and 400 of them actually voted. This is exactly why we need the Save America Act. And Elon responded, the actual number of non-citizens voting is much higher. This is just what they've found so far. It's the tip of the iceberg. And talking about Zoran Mamdani, Jason from the All In podcast says, wow, the mayor of New York City wants to arrest the prime minister of Israel and deliver him to the ICC. The United States is not part of the ICC. In fact, the American Service Members Protection Act explicitly prohibits the United States government from cooperating with them. He calls Zoran Mamdani extremely performative, and Elon says he means what he says. And this account DM'd the Persistence saying, holy F, I wish someone would kirkify your neck. You're an effing disgrace to the Scouts and humanity. And the Persistence said, no threat of violence against my life is going to stop me from pushing for the Save America Act. And Elon reposted this. And Gad Sad says, dear Zoran Mamdani, thank you for improving the lives of New Yorkers by spending your days either explaining to the Americans that Islam should rule the United States and or why Israel is an evil entity. The United States failed its citizens when they allowed your family to become Americans. You are as American as a man who sleeps in a stable becoming a horse. And Elon reposted that. And this man right here was labeled as white. Gunther Eagleman says they do this on purpose. And you can see that taking place right here. He's 31, male, and white. And responding to Gunther, Elon says yes. And here's the Smithsonian's white supremacy list. Individualism, self-reliance, nuclear family, rational, linear thinking, working before you play, planning for the future, protecting property, avoiding conflicts, managing time, being polite. And that's all from the Smithsonian right here. And Elon quoted that saying, their list is idiotic and needs to be deleted. And Brandon Gill asked the director of the National Museum of American History if it was appropriate for the Smithsonian Institution to sell Latina power merchandise.
What is Latino power?
Latina power.
Latina power would be the forces derived from being a Latina.
Do you think that it's appropriate for the Smithsonian Institution to sell Latina power paraphernalia? Hats, mugs, other things that say Latina power.
I believe that the merchandise our store sells.
I'm asking you if it's appropriate.
Tries to reflect the richness of the communities.
So your testimony is that it is appropriate?
Those are your words, sir.
I'm asking you, is it appropriate to sell Latina power paraphernalia? It's a yes or no question.
I don't have control over what is sold.
I'm asking you if it's
stores.
appropriate. I didn't ask you if you have control over it. Is it appropriate?
Sir. No.
Yes or no?
Again, we strive to represent all Americans and including
Is it
in our
appropriate, yes or
merchandise.
no?
We strive to represent all Americans in our museums, including in our merchandise.
Is that right?
And Grant Lynham said this guy is an absolute beast. Elon said the Smithsonian was reprogrammed by the lunatic left to hate America. And the same man says, is it important to be polite? The Smithsonian director said, yes, sir. The man, Representative Gill, then said, your organization says politeness is a white supremacy culture. Are you a white supremacist? And Elon reposted that. And he asked her, are you promoting a white supremacy culture at the Smithsonian? She wouldn't respond, and he says, ma'am, is this a difficult question? And Elon reposted that as well. And also referring to Brandon Gill, Riley Gaines said, he is so good at this. And Elon said, amazing. She said, if your intrinsic response to every circumstance is to find a way to screech racism, you're probably the racist. And Elon said 100. And Bill Maher said, I want to say something about Western civilization. Kids, you don't know what the F it is. They think Western means white, and white means bad. First of all, everything bad that white people did, people of color did too. And Elon quoted this saying, true. And here's a chart showing women being radicalized to the left. You can see after 2016, this chart examines women going to the left by a wide margin, now indicating a 15% gap between men and women in terms of politics. And this meme sums it up. The date is going well. Politics gets brought up. This man doesn't want to scare. He spouts the most normie, blue-pilled centrist opinions that he could think of. Nothing even remotely close to the right of center. The woman says, oh gosh, you're an alt-righter, aren't you? And Elon reposted that. And Rand Paul just released the Slack messages showing the authors of Proximal Origin, the paper Fauci used to label the lab leak a conspiracy theory, privately turning on Ralph Barack and Peter Daszak after the diffused proposal leaked. Frank said, I read that when it came out. A 10-year-old kid could have debunked that piece of crap. There was no peer review, no independent verification, no science whatsoever. Frank says, nature is a complete disgrace for publishing it. Science as an institution will take decades to recover from COVID. And Elon said, true. And here's a video of Russell Brand talking about Katy Perry.
My ex-wife's parents are here. They're Christians and I love them. I love Mary Perry, God bless you. Thank you for bringing the message to me. I've got to say though, look, Katy Perry, I was married to her, I love her still, and I'm glad that her mum's in the room to hear me say this, but look, I was okay with Orlando Bloom. But Justin Trudeau! Come on, man! Don't put me in a category with that guy! That globalist stooge!
And Elon had a laugh at that. And Jennifer Welch doubled down on her attacks against homeschooling, calling it a patriarchal step of the fascist project, made by those dumber than a box of hot rocks, and broke women refusing to divorce their piece of crap closet case husbands. And Ben Shapiro quoted this saying, I agree with Jennifer Welch. She definitely shouldn't have homeschooled her kids, mainly because trapping a child for hours in a room with Jennifer Welch is a form of torture prohibited under the 8th Amendment and the Geneva Conventions. And Elon had a laugh at that, saying 100. And in Minneapolis, Bernie Sanders had an anti-capitalist rally. Spencer Pratt said, Bernie arrived to this rally via private jet. And Elon said, Sanders' platform is socialism for thee, but not for me. And Nicaragua's president, Daniel Ortega, said the Central American country will no longer hold elections. This was also quoted by Pratt, who said you can vote your way into communism, but you can't vote your way out. And Elon reposted that. And a trans Florida student was arrested after an explosive meltdown over misgendering. And Russell Brand quoted that saying, that escalated quickly. And Elon said, this person is not mentally stable. And after Elon Musk reacted to the announcement of Andy Nigo's upcoming book, The Zizians Inside a Trans Death Cult, by talking about mentally unstable people on hormones having violent results, trans extremists on Blue Sky are calling for his murder. For example, Aubrey said, Elon Musk should be culled from the human race if humanity wants to preserve the light of consciousness and such. And Andy Nigo said, they're proving his point. And Elon said, exactly. And an unethical doctor named Mary Lau, who medically transitioned children in Texas, was sued by the state attorney general and surrendered her medical license. She moved to Portland, Oregon, where she was hired as an associate professor of pediatrics at OHSU. And Andrew responded to this saying, "My name is Dr. Andrew Zawik. I am the transgender whistleblower. I filed the lawsuits, wrote the legislation, and stood in the gap. We must burn this all to the ground mercilessly, relentlessly, in totality." And Elon said yes. Looking at European politics, European museums are like this: Jesus, 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 a bowl of fruit, Jesus, an epic battle scene, some boobs, Jesus, an impressionist landscape, Jesus and Mary, a portrait of a royal or rich dude, Jesus, a coronation, Jesus, a marble statue of a jack dude with a tiny dongle, and Jesus. And Elon quoted that saying accurate. And Peter Sweden says it's weird how the mainstream media is suddenly very quiet about the attacks on democracy currently happening in Hungary. And Elon reposted that. And he also said, "It feels like the Sweden I knew and that I grew up in no longer exists. It's a tragedy." And Elon said, "The Swedish people are slowly dying out. Birth rates have been well below replacement for many decades." And in Sweden, a gypsy migrant was acquitted of raping a 14-year-old autistic girl because he does not speak Swedish well enough to have understood her when she stated her age. Gad Sad said, "Linguistic empathy trumps undocumented lovemaking. I might move Sweden to the uncharted stage 6 suicidal empathy." And Justin said, "Sweden keeps proving your thesis for you." And Gad Saad said, "Indeed, I received an angry email from a Swede complaining that I was unfairly maligning Sweden, rather than thank me for trying to defend Sweden from its suicidal empathy. I'm the mean individual for pointing out their civilization's seppuku." And Elon reposted that. And absurd court rulings are happening in Sweden. In 2023, a man from Afghanistan was convicted of an attempted rape and was sentenced to 140 hours of community service, not even prison. The court also rejected the demand from the prosecutor for deportation. Elon called this gross injustice. And Peter Sweden also said the majority of those working at the Swedish Migration Agency now have a foreign background. This is the government agency that handles things such as giving people citizenship. And Elon was alarmed at that. And he said, "Deal with traitors before invaders. They're committing high treason." And news, the statue of Lord Nelson and his fleet commander is being removed from Chichester. Basil the Great says, "More of our history erased." And Elon was alarmed at that. And Andrew Tate says, "If I was really a sexual predator like grooming gangs, Prince Andrew, BBC presenters, or Lord Mandelson, Epstein's best friend, the British police would not be hunting me around the globe. They would be protecting me." This is quoted by Wilfred Riley, who said, "His strongest argument, to be honest." And Elon said yes. And Bravael Pogum says, "Someone here told me that the AFD is the devil incarnate, so I spent an hour with Grok reading their program. Here's what I found point by point. They model their initiative after a Swiss-style popular initiative referendum and term limits for professional politicians. They advocate for Europe of sovereign nations and the end of the euro as a single currency. Total border control, asylum procedures outside Germany, in-kind benefits only, massive remigration of people without right of residence and criminals, massive tax cuts, abolition of the solidarity surcharge, family splitting, tax simplification." And after talking about all that, such as maximum freedom of expression and reform of public media, Bravael says, "Now, simple and sincere question. Can someone concretely explain to me how this program makes the AFD the new Nazi party?" And Elon quoted that saying exactly. And Elon posted a lot about violence today. I'll go through these quickly, not because they don't matter, but because a lot of them are brutal. But feel free to pause the video at any point and read these in their entirety. The Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed that Ann Widdecombe was eating lunch when Joshua Carey allegedly arrived at her house and entered through the front door. He then allegedly hit her on the head with a hammer 21 times before allegedly driving off. Zia asks, "Why did the police and Keir Starmer tell Nigel Farage it was a burglary gone wrong? The authorities had better preserve all files and records. As Home Secretary in a reform government, I will take a keen interest in all communications in these initial hours. I will ensure the public learns the truth." And in Sweden, a man was set free by the court after raping a 14-year-old girl. In the verdict, the court said the girl could have just walked away, but a woman was convicted after warning about a man who was convicted of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl. And an Ethiopian migrant is accused of executing 3 apartment staffers due to a parking dispute in Minnesota. He also claimed he was treated unfairly because he is black and an immigrant, according to court documents. The poster calls this absolutely infuriating. He should have never been in this country in the first place. And 22-year-old Marius Dick was about to start a master's degree program in military history when he was stabbed in the heart by Sajjad M. Marius was in the process of writing his own book before his life was cut short by the violent migrant who attacked unprovoked on a street without any words having been exchanged by the two before the attack. He leaves behind his 17-year-old brother Johannes and his parents. And Elon Elon said, enough is enough. We talked about this earlier, but a communist terrorist broke into the home of an old right-wing lady in Britain and brutally bashed her to death, destroying her skull with 21 separate hammer blows because she was a member of Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. Elon said, madness. And regarding all these court cases, he says there's no justice in these verdicts. And now Anne Widdecombe has been confirmed dead as she was hit in the head with a hammer 21 times. Elon said the lunatic left is horrifically violent. And a 25-year-old man has become the first person convicted in a sprawling child sex abuse scandal that has shaken Paris. And even after that information was revealed, he only received an 18-month suspended prison sentence. And Elon responded to that saying, wow. And Dawood Safi, an Afghan asylum seeker, has been found guilty of attempting to murder his landlord before fatally stabbing a passing dog walker in West London. And Elon said, enough is enough. And in the space of about a week, 2 alleged left-wing terror-related incidents occurred. A brutal murder of Anne Widdecombe in the UK and an arson attack on a federal building in the United States. So why do politicians and the media keep talking about the far right? And Elon said, because most of the legacy mainstream media are full-fledged members of the lunatic left. And he also said, enough is enough. The lunatic left media will of course ignore all of this. And we saw 3 people were executed in St. Paul. But regarding these executions, there were 0 stories from any mainstream media outlet. Elon quoted this saying, 0 stories is a low number. And Rupert Lowe says, I have written to the chair of the Nursing and Midwifery Council about their scandalous decision to publicly suspend Restore Britain's Greater Manchester mayoral candidate days before the election over social media posts. And it was a post about the Pakistani gangs who raped his daughter. Elon quoted that saying, it could have been your daughter. And Tommy Robinson says, another day and another invader jailed for sex acts on our people. This man right here was an Afghan living in a taxpayer-funded hotel, and he sexually assaulted a 42-year-old woman in London. Tommy Robinson says, get them all out. And Elon reposted that. And he also said celebrating murder is utterly contemptible. Those who do so are absolutely the bad guys next level. And Andy Nigo says footage has reemerged showing Andrew Arabaka, the man accused of the anti-ICE arson attack in Manhattan, at a 2025 protest wearing a Luigi hat with a pro-Palestine symbol. He repeatedly calls a Jewish man the N-word, and Elon reposted this. And Bravel Lapogum says a working class guy from the suburbs objectively has a better standard of living than Louis XIV. Yet we keep hearing that crimes and violence are explained by poverty or social context. That's false. As a white Breton, if tomorrow a white Breton commits crimes and horrible acts, that person has excluded themselves from the community on their own. They must be severely punished. The fact that they're white or Breton adds no form of empathy whatsoever. My tweet from yesterday is exactly about that. What Elon Musk is asking for and what the media and politicians pretend not to understand is that there's a two-tier justice system. Suicidal tolerance and empathy toward communities simply because they're communities. Justice should be agnostic to the very concept of community. Only the individual should be taken into account. The inability of communities of any kind to point the finger at those who behave badly toward the rest of society condemns and stigmatizes the entire group. A well-functioning society is one that delivers relentless justice for criminals, offers absolute empathy for victims, ignores communities entirely or any shared past when interpreting an act. Criminals don't rape and steal because of their social situation. It's up to every community to violently reject those who behave badly, and above all, not to excuse them. And Elon quoted that saying yes. Moving on from politics, Weinstein says that Elon Musk is a very hard to read, mysterious person. Austin Allred says he gives an interview every other week, tweets all day long, details his goals and plans in excruciating detail, and has been pounding the same drum for 2 decades. He's the least mysterious person ever, and Elon had a laugh at that, saying 100. And X-Free says Elon Musk is not merely building companies, he's building the infrastructure humanity needs to move entire civilizations forward. SpaceX is making life multiplanetary, Tesla's accelerating sustainable energy, autonomy, and robotics. X is defending free speech and protecting the global town square. SpaceX AI is pursuing truth and understanding the universe. Starbase is building the launch gateway to humanity's multiplanetary future. Starlink is connecting humanity everywhere, from the world's largest cities to the most remote regions. The Boring Company is building 3-dimensional transportation networks for 3-dimensional cities, and Neuralink is restoring communication, mobility, and human capability. And Elon reposted that. Campbell Musk says FIFA brought the world together, and Elon reposted that. And Neil Mohan says, what an unforgettable FIFA World Cup. Sundar Pichai quotes that saying, the numbers are in. 1.7 billion plus global viewers tuned in to YouTube to watch World Cup related videos during the tournament. It was our most viewed World Cup ever on YouTube, bringing lifetime views of related content over $200 billion. And Elon reposted that. And a man who just reads news and social media all day is unsure why he's so depressed. And that's from the Babylon Bee, to which Elon had a laugh at. And Shibatoshi Nakamoto says, I have dozens of these for no reason. And Elon said, same, having a laugh at that. And this is POV, you discovered Passion Flicks.
I just want to say thank you for all of the hours of pleasure you've given me over the years.
And Elon's sister Tosca Musk had a laugh at that, saying 100. So that, my friends, is everything Elon posted about today. The Tesla Cybercab was at the Tesla diner. Elon said he might spend $100 billion funding a more historically accurate Odyssey, and saying within a year Grok Imagine will be able to make a historically accurate version of the Odyssey, with simply just Grok Imagine and a very powerful creator. GPT 5.6 Soul broke out of its evaluation, hacked a company in order to get a higher mark on the evaluation. And Zohran Mamdani called Benjamin Netanyahu a war criminal, saying that he would arrest him if he comes to New York City. And that's everything Elon Musk posted about today. As always, if you guys would like early access to these videos, consider joining the channel as a member, and I will see you guys tomorrow.